All right, you guys. Yes, I will see you on the other side. Hi, Sarah. Glad you're here. Greetings, beloved children. It's your group souls arena, of course. And we are so delighted to sit with you in this glorious, esteemed, loving, fruitful energy. As we gather in all the different tendrils of thought, of life experience, of the living well of your beingness, all of you, of all of the loving tributes that you have gathered for yourself and for others throughout the centuries, throughout the eons, as we gather all these aspects and bring them together in one fabric. We cannot help but admire all of you for being the travelers that you are, the frequent flyers, the ones who migrate, the ones who move. And while some of you now in the physical plane may feel rather planted upon our dear planet, still you are moving spiritually. Still you are migrating in consciousness, migrating as different levels of your consciousness become more and more apparent to you. You are all of you travelers. You are all migrators. You are all pilgrims. You are all journeyers. And the journey that you are on now is so incredibly interesting. Have you noticed that your journeys lately have become more plastic, shall we say, less rigid, more flexible, more easily flowing from one shape into the other? Have you noticed that you are more willing these days to let yesterday go behind you and be fully present to the moment that you are in now? This is because you are frequent flyers. This is because you are on a frequent migration path. This is because over time you have learned how to travel lightly, how to budget your sensitivities in such a way so that you do not let yourself become overly attached to this dogma or that theory or this building or those pair of shoes or this hairstyle or that particular diet. All of you have been shape shifting and migrating constantly. And I'll tell you, it is an honor and a pleasure to make this journey with you. We would like to bring in several pilgrims, several souls who have been on a vast pilgrimage and have wonderful words of counsel to bring in. People who have served as Sherpas, as guides, as companions upon the road, people who have dusty feet, just as you do, people who have seen things, just as you are, people whose ankles and knees and thighs have ached, people whose arms have felt weary, just as yours have, and just as yours do from time to time. All of the ones gathered have been human and understand well what it means to be fully human and fully divine. And so we would like to bring in our first speaker. Our first speaker is a beautiful old soul who happens to have served as a Sherpa guide in the Himalayas. His name is Sim, very simply. He says, "That's fine. You can call me Sim." And he's ready to come forward. Please give him your heart and your mind. Good evening, fellow travelers. You may call me Sim. It is an abbreviation of my full name, but Sim is fine. In my most recent Earth life, I was what you call a Sherpa. I carried heavy baggage. My feet were accustomed to the hard pathways of the Himalayas. I spent all of my life walking up and down those narrow pathways and guiding many a European, many an Asian, many an African, many people from all over this planet with many different colors of skin and different belief systems. At one point, I even guided this channel's parents up, 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 and later down, down, down. One of the things I learned in my steady, steady climb of those beautiful rolling hills and mountains of the Himalayas is that the Himalayas themselves are on a journey. I learned to appreciate the journey that the Himalayas are on by listening deeply to the sounds that the mountains would make as we walked upon them. I began to feel the sound of the mountains through every crevice and every crack. I began to notice that what was on the surface of the mountain was calling to me deep, deep within. And what I began to hear was a tale of a journey that these mountains were speaking of. These mountains told me over and over again, we have not always been high. At one point, we were low. We were low to the ocean floor. We had a very different point of view. We were at what the humans call sea level. And as we lay there in our grounded state, we had visions of one day traveling high and up. And that vision of travel is what allowed us to assert our consciousness, build our strength, gather our focus, and push ourselves up, 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 folding onto ourselves. And so we became what is known as the high mountains of the Himalayas. That has been our pilgrimage. And we have another pilgrimage ahead. This is what I heard the mountains tell me. And we have another pilgrimage ahead. For we are willing now to be grounded. We are willing to slowly let go of our exalted point of view and move gradually, gradually, grain of sand by grain of sand, pebble by pebble, dust by dust, until we are once again at sea level. You see, we have heard over the centuries in many different languages that the first shall be last and the last shall be first. We have heard through many different human spiritual traditions that the Alpha and the Omega are one and the same. We have seen the images of the snake biting its tail. And so we have been ready for quite some time. We have been ready for our next journey, a journey of grounding, a journey in which we allow ourselves to once again melt into the ocean floor and take up residence there. As we spoke this way to our beloved Sim, and as Sim listened to us, our dear Sherpa guide gathered unto himself all of the different patterns of all the different spiritual paths that he had listened to over the years. Oh, there had been many. We will let Sim tell you. We step aside and allow our human counterpart, Sim, to speak for us. And this is Sim, the human counterpart of the Himalayas. What they have spoken to you is true. I heard what you call the Methodist speak. I heard the metaphysicians speak. I heard the beautiful Muslims speak. I heard the Buddhist and the Hindu. I heard the Baha'i. I heard the atheist. I heard the agnostic. I heard the pagan. I heard from every single spiritual walk. And what every single walker spoke of was the deep humility, the bowing down that comes to all life forms, the exhale, the giving forward of life breath so that all form may collapse, so that all form may be born again. This system of dying to be reborn is circulating and has been circulating in all spiritual systems all across this planet, but also on many others as well. I was moved to come in when I heard the channel tell the story of placing the butter in her coffee and joked that she must have been tapping into a lifetime in the Himalayas. I had no desire to say to her then, why, that's true. You did have a lifetime. I did not want to dissuade her of her pattern of laughter. But I tell her and I tell you, that is true. That is one of her pathways and one of yours. It is my belief, dear ones, that you all were there. You all took that journey, and you all were well placed to guide others up and down those mountains. You may remember from time to time the weight upon your back. You may remember how calloused and rough your feet became. You may remember the smell of the air as you moved farther and farther up the mountain. You may remember that there were pilgrims that you helped ascend and helped descend, who needed extra care, who had fragile egos, who needed to be taken care of in special ways. You may remember these energies as well. All of these are back with you in this lifetime now. As I listened to you, dear ones, describing what was hard and what felt like a challenge, I thought to myself, oh my, yes, but of course, they're all walking up the Himalayas once again. And they're not only carrying their own baggage, but they are helping others to carry theirs as well. Of course, they're tired. Of course, it's hard. Of course, it's challenging. But this is what I want to say to you, dear ones, dear friends. Remember that the Himalayas themselves are on a journey, that they too are pilgrims, and that their journey has been to make themselves into mountains so that people like us could climb them and look from their vast distance. Now they are on another journey. They are a journey to move back to sea level so that people like us might learn what it is like to rest and to move into a different way of being. You have heard the prophecies over and over that the mountains shall be made flat and that those flat places shall be made high. You have heard the prophecies that rivers shall run in the desert. You have heard the prophecies that the earth itself will marry itself into a new way of being. You have heard the prophecies that have spoken of a new earth that is much more transparent than the one that you are walking upon now. An earth that is porous, that is far more liquid than perhaps you are used to now. And you have heard the prophecies of how your own bodies will become more porous and more liquid as you move into what we will call the sea level of your consciousness. Thank you for listening to all of this. It has been a pleasure to sit with you, to be with you once again, to join with you. I am here now to help move those burdens off of your shoulders so that we may make our descent as one down to the sea where everything is born once again, the sea where everything comes alive once again. Thank you. You are so deeply appreciated. Bless you. This is your group Souls Arena, and we wanted to thank Sim and the Himalayas for coming in and bringing us these beautiful messages. And now we have another group of beings that have asked to come in. They are your future selves, and they are waiting at the horizon quite politely. They would love to be welcomed in. If you will simply give them the nod of your approval, they will take up residence here. We will step aside so that your future selves may come through. Hello. Greetings. What a delight to be with you all. What your group soul said about us is true. We are your future selves. We are your future becomings. We are your descendants, not necessarily your physical descendants, but your descendants in consciousness. And we come from a time that you would call 1,000 years, more like 1,200 perhaps. But we come from a period of time in which your bodies will be dust. And there may remain some fragments of you deep down in the ground, some fragments of skeleton, a piece of cloth here or there. But for the most part, you, your bodies, your personalities have long disappeared by the time that we, your future descendants, come upon the scene. What we'd like to say to you, first of all, is thank you. Thank you, grandparents. Thank you. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for the way in which you hung in there during all that change and all that transition. Thank you for the way you stood in the gap. Thank you for the way you held the promise of your future becoming. Thank you for the way in which you thought about us. Thank you for the marvelous way you had of reinventing what it means to be a human being. You did it, you know. It happened in your generation. And so we are so deeply grateful to you, each and every one of you. We would not exist if not for your beautiful, hard, deliberate work. Do you know that every time one of you became ill, it meant that one of us, far off in the future, lives a life that is disease free because of your struggles? We live in a way that means that none of us have to suffer the ravages of disease. We have a very different way of aging now, a very different way of becoming more and more porous, a different way of evolving. And you and your family of thought and your original thinking, you were the ones, because of your, shall we call it, metaphysical campaigns to strengthen the bonds to your own divinity, to loosen the bonds to your egos, to your personalities, and to your dear bodies, and to remember that you are vibrating on all levels of consciousness all at once because of you, dear ones. We are sailing. We are thriving. We are alive and well. You should see the babies that are being born. You should see the fruits of your labor. You should see what is happening here. It is beautiful. It is fragrant. It is fruitful. And it is still continuing. And so, because of you, dear ones, we have made a vow to return in our so-called time machines. Well, we'll get to that later on. I bet you're curious about that. We have made a vow to use our so-called time machines. It's just consciousness, dear ones. You know that. It's just consciousness. There's no machine. It's only consciousness. But we use our consciousness and we travel to this period right now. And we help you, all of you, to anchor yourself to this wobbly, beloved planet, to anchor yourself, to plant your seeds, to think your good thoughts, to engage in your physical bodies, to continue to bring love where love appears, not to be, to continue to bring light where darkness seems to be. We visit you, and we are here to remind you over and over and over again, you are the reason that life has continued in the most amazing, spectacular way that we promise you it has. Would you like to know what you look like in 1,000 years? Oh, you're just beautiful. You're a kind of blend of every single race. Your skin is a beautiful brown. Your eyes are slightly upturned. You're Asian and you're African and you're Thai and you're Chinese and you're European, you're Scandinavian. You are all races, and you have delightfully commingled. At this time, at our time, there were really very few what you would call pure races. In fact, whenever there is somebody who is what you would call a pure race, we rejoice. We say, oh, look, here's proof of what we used to be. But in our time, beloveds, well, we look a little different than what you look like, but I promise you, you would find us to be absolutely gorgeous and splendid. Now we've come in because we want you to have hope. We know it's a tough time. We've read all about it. We have studied your stories. We have found ways to go back into what you would call your videotape, into your libraries. We've kept it all. We have found a way to hold on to the records of this time. We've kept everything. Everything is pristine. No names are lost. Everybody's names are there. And there, of course, there are the Akashic records as well, which are absolutely clean and pristine. But we want you to know that those of us in physical form hold the record of this time. We understand that this is a time of great transition. For us, it reminds us of when the Roman Empire fell, or when the Etruscan Empire fell, and a new way of living came about. We are watching your new way of living coming about, and we want you to know that it is beautiful. You all have been so dear and so patient, listening to the voice from the future. We so deeply appreciate it. And you know what hasn't changed? What really hasn't changed is love. Love is the same in the future. We love just as deeply and dearly as you do. But for us, the ways in which love moves us through dimension is just a little different. That's all. But the love is the same. You would recognize us as your neighbor. We recognize you as ours, and we love you as dearly as we love ourselves. Bless you, dear ones. Bless you, and thank you. And it's your group souls, Arena. We wanted to thank these dear voices from the future. And we have another presence who has come in and has asked for audience. You know her by her beautiful name, Lady Nada. She is present, and she has asked to be escorted in. And so we step aside as the beautiful Lady Nada comes through. Good evening, my beloved ones. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to stand in your beautiful energy. Wasn't that wonderful to hear from your future selves? How thrilling, my darlings. Do you know that they have also had occasion to hear from their future selves, and their future selves have had occasion to hear from their future selves, and so forth and so on? It is a rippling of loving communication that has been going on really since the beginning of time. And it is a beautiful thing. We are all one family, past, present, and future. Isn't that wonderful to know? Darling ones, in my time, I was also aware of the many shiftings on the planet. It took me a long time to figure this out as a child because I would notice that as I walked upon the planet's surface, that there were places on the planet where my feet felt very hot, and places on the planet where my feet felt very cold. There were times when I would go from hot to cold and cold to hot. I really had no one to talk to about this. I kept it to myself. I had brothers and a sister who were quite famous in their own way. I chose not to be famous. I chose to be out of the limelight, you might say. I chose to keep to myself. But as I walked and felt the different levels of temperature moving through my body, at one point I was given access to read a letter from inside an old, old tree. You have been speaking to trees, have you not? You have heard from dear Lady Banyan, and your channel has a relationship with a dear northern pine. My tree was a different kind of tree. My tree was an acacia tree, and my tree had been sickly, and my tree called to me one day. And as I walked towards my tree, I could feel my cold feet upon the ground. And my tree read to me a letter. And the letter said basically this earth is going through many changes, hot to cold, cold to hot. Sickness and health are revolving upon this planet. This planet is now engaged in a dualism of opposites. The law of polarity is bringing in all these different opposites, hot and cold, love and fear, light and dark. But the time is coming, said my acacia tree, when we all will be returned to the sea, and there no longer will be the very high or the very low or the very hot or the very cold. There will simply be consciousness. As I read this letter from my acacia tree, I initially felt sad, for I loved the experiences of the earth plane. But as I pondered upon them, and as I pondered upon the frequency of emotion in my own life, and as I worked with times in which my emotions would flip from rage to humor, from contentment to anxiety, from anger to love, from paranoia to trust, as I would work with my own emotions, I found that I also had a letter written deep, deep within me. Like the acacia tree, I had my roots in a consciousness that went way, way beyond me, and my branches in a consciousness that went way, way ahead of me. And the roots and the branches of consciousness told me that there is a place for all of us where the first is last and the last is first, where the exalted are low and the low become high. There is a place in consciousness, a level place, a commonality of what we would call the sea, that place where life begins once again. And so I learned to love the knowing that little by little, my walk upon this planet would be right in the middle of the path, neither too hot nor too cold, right in the middle. Darling ones, this is what I see you working on walking right in the middle way, neither too high nor too low, but balanced in the equilibrium of a beautiful floating sea. And now, if you will consider with me that all of you are floating now in a beautiful, warm, and buoyant sea, the amniotic fluid that is so familiar to you, that you have been floating in fact, from the very beginning. It is a fluid that you have never left. It is a fluid that reminds you that, in fact, you were never born and you will never die, that you are in a constant state at the depth of your being of simply floating and being and marveling at the light that is all. Let us float, beloved ones. Let us remember this amniotic sea. Let us remember that in this fluid, we are absolutely balanced. We are absolutely free. Your beloved master teacher has referred to this as living water. It is an emotional state that is indeed alive in the fact that it is absolutely open to the present moment. It is entirely present, entirely here, entirely now. Float here with me, my beloved companions. Float here and know that all is well. We have gathered around you to assure you that none of you are off your path. None of you are too busy, and none of you are not busy enough. That each and every one of you are living your life in the way that helps keep everything in equilibrium. And as your beautiful brothers and sisters from the future have told you, the work that you are doing now ensures a life that is ongoing and full of what we call this amniotic fluid, this always becoming, this equilibrium, this now. Thank you, beloved ones, for listening and for allowing. You are so dearly cherished. Bless you. And this is your group Souls Arena, and we are so blessed to have these beautiful voices come and reassure us. Dear ones, it has been suggested that right now that we affirm that we are holding hands with each other. And so feel this right now in your physical hands, if you will. Feel that you are holding hands with this beautiful group, and feel that there are energies present that you may not see in physical form, but yes, they are surely here. There are so many loving relatives and ancestors and beloved ones, so many angels, teachers, and guides. We are all holding hands with each other. Know and feel that our circle is infinite. It is so wide, you can't get around it, so high, you can't get over it. Surely the mountain has come to the sea in this now moment, in this moment of knowing that we truly are one luminous, shining being of perfect love. And we bless you. And we bless you. And we bless you. Gently, gently, dear pilgrims, gently, dear Sherpas, gently, dear travelers, gently, dear ones, bring yourselves back to the knowing that you have chosen to live in a beautiful physical body. And so you can feel your hands and your knees and your toes. You remember your eyelashes, your eyebrows, your hair. You remember your heart and your breath. You remember this beautiful vow you made to live as divine beings in a very human body with a magnificently human personality. And you see the joining of your divinity and your humanity as a blessed, sacred marriage that nothing, nothing, nothing can ever declare as null. This marriage is a marriage that lasts, and aren't we all blessed for it? Bless you, dear ones. Gather yourself forward now. We love you. Namaste.